Hello, my name is Clara Everdeen, and I'm 37 years old. 3 years ago, I buried my only daughter after a tragic accident that tore our lives apart. But last night, I opened the door and she was standing there alive. She hadn't aged. She was wearing the same pink jacket she died in. And she said, "Mommy, can I come in now?" This is my story, It's real, It's terrifying, and it's not over yet. If you love true story-style thrillers, emotional suspense, and dark mysteries, please subscribe, like, and share the story from Dark Life Side Diaries. Your support helps me continue telling these untold stories. It was almost midnight when the knock came, not loud, not frantic, just soft, like someone testing if the world still knew them. And I was sitting on the couch staring at the old family photo album, and I was sitting on that couch, sitting on the couch, sitting on the couch, staring at the old family photo album, reliving the years I tried so hard to forget when I heard it, and something inside me twisted because I knew without even standing up that it was her, that somehow, impossibly, it was Ava, my daughter, who'd been gone for 3 years, buried in the cold soil of Fairgrove Cemetery after the accident on Highway 8, the one they said no child could have survived. But when I opened the door, I saw her standing in the porch light. The same curly hair, the same dimples, the same pink raincoat she was wearing when they pulled her body from the wreckage. And she smiled and said, "You left the light on for me," and I collapsed to my knees. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just reached out and touched her hand, and it was warm, solid, real. My mind was spinning, trying to rationalize, was this some twisted prank? Was it a child that just looked like her? But then she stepped inside and her eyes met mine, and I saw the little scar above her left eyebrow from when she fell off the swing, the chipped front tooth she got at age 6, the way she twisted her fingers together when she was nervous. "Where have you been?" I whispered, and she said, "Somewhere dark, but they let me come home, just for now." My heart sank. I pulled her close and held her like I never wanted to let go. But I noticed something strange. Her clothes were clean, spotless, not a wrinkle or a smudge, like they'd been frozen in time. She smelled like lavender and ash. And when she sat on the couch, she stared at the corner of the room and asked, "Is Daddy still in the walls?" That's when my stomach dropped. My husband, Grant, went missing 6 months after Eva died. His body never found. He always believed her death wasn't natural, that someone or something took her. He kept saying she was returning. We thought he'd lost his mind. But maybe he saw what I refused to, that she wasn't just dead. She was taken, and now she came back wrong. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second, because how could I, when my daughter, dead and buried for 3 years, was asleep in her childhood bed upstairs, her little fingers curled around the same stuffed fox she'd clung to the night of the accident, the same toy I'd buried with her in the casket. I remember dropping it in myself, placing it beside her folded hands, watching through a veil of tears as they sealed her away forever, and yet there it was, held gently in her grasp like nothing had ever happened, like time had not passed, like the earth hadn't swallowed her whole. The clock ticked loudly, mocking me with every passing second, and the quiet of the house pressed in, until it wasn't quiet anymore, until I could hear movement upstairs. A soft whispering like a voice not speaking words, but remembering them. And when I crept up the stairs and pushed open her bedroom door, I found Eva sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the corner of the ceiling where shadow pooled unnaturally deep, whispering softly, "They still listen. They still watch." And then she turned to me with that same smile I remembered from before she learned the world could hurt her. "Do you still keep the nails in the basement?" she asked, and my spine stiffened. "Why would you ask that?" I said. "Because they said it's almost time," she replied, swinging her legs out of bed and padding barefoot to the window. "And if the nails aren't in the basement, the doors won't stay shut when the ground starts whispering again." I wanted to tell myself this was grief, trauma, hallucination, but the cold weight of the air around her, the wrongness that came off her like static, it made me know this was something deeper, something older than science could ever explain. "Where did you go, Eva?" I asked her that morning while making breakfast, and she didn't look at me when she answered. She looked at the toaster, the gleam of its metal surface like a mirror. "It's not called a where. It's called a below," she said, "and you can't walk there. They have to pull you in." I dropped the spatula. "Who are they?" I whispered. She finally looked at me. "The children without faces. They live behind the mirror walls and feed on your sleep. My hands trembled. She continued, Daddy. Met them. He wouldn't let them take me twice, so they took him instead. The hallway behind her darkened. The lights flickered once, then again. She didn't react. Later that night, I checked her room again and found her drawing pages and pages of stick figures with hollow black circles for eyes, floating above graveyards, standing beside beds, crawling out of mirrors. One of them had my name written beneath. Mommy, when I asked her about the drawing, she just said, "You'll see them soon. They already like you." I burned the pages in the fireplace. That was a mistake. That same night, I woke up gasping. My bedroom door was wide open, and at the foot of the bed was a puddle of dark soil, wet and smelling like old graves. Eva stood at the doorway. Her eyes were bleeding not with blood, but with light, like her. Soul was trying to look out through the cracks. "You burned their story," she said, and behind her, just beyond the hallway, I saw a figure tall, gray, faceless, its hands pressed to the walls like it was melting through them. I screamed, turned on every light, but it was gone. Ava didn't come back to her room for the rest of the night. The next morning, I found her sleeping on the kitchen floor, her body curled into the shape of a spiral, her lips whispering the words, "Burial is not escape." I called every doctor I could. No records, no identity match. Not even the DNA test I ordered came back right. It said inconclusive, flagged as genetic drift anomaly. No one could explain her. No one wanted to. My last desperate act was visiting Father Morin, the same priest who had performed her funeral service. When he saw her current photo, he turned pale and said, "That's impossible." I buried that child myself. I remember because the casket kept rattling before we lowered it. I dropped the photo. He whispered, "Sometimes they don't rest. Sometimes the spirit doesn't come back. Something else does." I begged him to help me bless the house. He refused. Said the presence was older than scripture. Said it wasn't possession. It was inversion. His soul turned inside out by being too long in the dark. When I came home, Eva was waiting for me at the top of the stairs. "They let me out," she said, "but only so I can lead them in." Then she held up a mirror, one I had never seen before, carved in bone along the frame, and when I looked into it, I didn't see myself. I saw a version of me I'd never met, pale, broken, and already buried. The moment Eva touched the cellar door, the house seemed to hold its breath, not creak, not groan, but actually pause, like the wood in the air, and even time itself knew something was about to change. And I wanted to stop her, scream, grab her hand and say, "Don't open it." But my body refused to move, frozen in place like whatever she was touching had bound me to, and with a soft click, the old bolt unlatched itself. The mechanism no longer rested, almost like it had been waiting for her specifically to return. And when the door creaked open, the smell that poured out wasn't just dust or rot, it was earth. Wet, disturbed, and something else, something sweet and foul at the same time, like sugar over decay. Ava turned her head toward me, eyes wide but calm. "He tried to hide it," she said, "but they always leave a door back." She began walking down the stairs without light, without hesitation, and I followed because I was her mother, because love still held a thread even as fear tried to snap it, and step by step we descended into the dark, deeper than the foundation of the house should have allowed stone turn to dirt, and dirt turned to something like ash, and I realized this wasn't a cellar anymore. It was a chamber, a hollow carved into the earth, too symmetrical, too deliberate. Along the walls were carving symbols, handprints burnt black into stone, and words scrawled in what looked like dried rust but smelled like blood. "We sing in silence. We wait in walls." In the center of the chamber was a wooden box child-sized, sealed with thick iron nails driven in at strange angles. Iva walked to it, knelt down, and whispered, "Daddy said if they ever came back from me, I'd have to feed them someone new." My breath caught. "Eva, what's in the box?" I asked. She looked up at me. "What's left of the first?" "Emmy," I stumbled back. "What are you talking about?" Her expression never changed. I wasn't supposed to be me. I was born the first time, just like every little girl. But when the accident happened, they found what was left. They offered to give me back if someone brought them through. Daddy agreed. But I came back broken. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a tooth, hers, one she lost when she was 6, one I still had in her old baby box in the attic. "I'm not your daughter, Mommy," she said softly. "I'm her echo." I screamed, turned, tried to run, but the stairs were gone. Behind me was only wall, solid, cold, and then I heard the nails in the box begin to squeak as if something inside was pushing against them. "You can't leave until you see," Eva whispered. The box burst open, not like wood cracking, but like it melted, and from within rose a figure child-sized, wet, trembling, identical to Eva but blank-eyed, hollow, twitching like a puppet without strings. It looked at me and mouthed the word "Mama," and I broke. I fell to my knees. "Which one of you is real?" I sobbed. Eva touched my cheek. "Does it matter? You buried one." "You prayed for the other," they answered. Then the walls around. Use began to move, hands emerging, stretching, faces with no mouths pressing through like thin fabric. And a voice, collective and slow, echoed from the ceiling. "We are owed. We are hungry." Eva stepped behind me and whispered, "Mommy, you have to choose which version of me you want to keep." And I realized far too late, not every resurrection is a blessing. Some are bargains. I didn't move for a long time, kneeling between two versions of my daughter, one silent, slick with soil and staring like a newborn clone of memory, and the other standing just behind me, steady and composed but whispering words too ancient for a child's tongue. And in that moment, I realized this was never about resurrection or reunion. It was about possession, not of flesh but of grief, because grief is a gateway, an offering, a crack in the walls between worlds, and whatever had followed Eva back, whatever had let her return, had simply waited for my ache to open wide enough for it to step through, and now it wanted permanence, and permanence required a sacrifice. "Pick one," Eva whispered, not pleading, not begging, but calmly, like she already knew I would fail the test. And when I turned to the version kneeling in the box, she raised a trembling hand and brushed her matted hair behind her ear exactly the way Eva used to when she was tired. And I felt something in my chest twist painfully, like part of me recognized her not by thought, but by muscle, by memory. "I held your hand when you fell," she said softly. "You held mine when I was cold," I blinked. Those were my words, my lullabies. Then the standing version, the one who came home that night, placed her hand gently on my shoulder and said, "You buried her, you prayed for me. I came because you called me. But now you must complete the circle or the others will stay." The chamber began to close, the walls folding in like breathing stone, the lights dimming to a dull red pulse, and the figures behind the walls pressing closer, whispering in unison, "Choose. Choose, choose." My mind fractured. I tried to imagine what a mother was supposed to do when asked to kill the past or forsake the present when both had her child's face, her voice, her scent, and in desperation I asked, "What happens to the one I don't choose?" They both answered together, "She feeds the dark." My hands trembled. The box version began to cry silently, tears running like ash down her pale cheeks while the standing one stepped back, calm, eyes unblinking. That's when I noticed something. The real Eva had a freckle right under her left eye. This version didn't. I moved toward the girl in the box. "You remember the lullaby?" I whispered. She nodded. "Sing it with me." And we did word for word until the walls screamed, the lights burst, and the standing Eva hissed in rage. "You broke the deal." Her form shimmered, splitting at the seams, too tall, too thin, fingers extending like shadow tendrils, and the walls pulled inward like a vacuum as she screamed in a language that made my ears bleed. I grabbed the box Eva, shielded her as the chamber collapsed, and in that moment, I made the only choice I could. I whispered, "Take me instead." The dark swallowed me, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the grass. In the backyard, the house stood silent. The cellar door was gone, just dirt. Beside me was the girl, asleep, breathing soft. I held her, the freckle was still there. I didn't speak. I just rocked her, sang the lullaby, and let the morning come. But sometimes when I'm alone, I still hear a knock on the mirror, and the voice says, "You chose the wrong one." At first, I thought the worst was over, that I had faced the darkness, made my choice, brought the right version of Eva back, the one with the freckle, the lullaby, the trembling hand that reached for mine like it remembered who we used to be. But peace is a cruel lie when horror has tasted you. And within 3 days of her return, the pattern started again. Quiet at first, the mirrors in the house began fogging from the inside, not steam but frost, even in the summer heat. Our dog Willow refused to go near Ava's room, standing at the edge of the hallway growling low, tail between her legs. And real Eva began talking in her sleep again. Not like a child, but in sentences too complex, too cold, like something buried in her had survived and was now learning to speak. One night I found her in the living room at 3 a.m., staring at the old grandfather clock and whispering, "When the hands point backward, the door will open." I asked what door. She turned to me, blinked, and said, "Daddy's door." That's when I remembered. My husband Grant's study always locked, always private, even after his disappearance. I never found the key. I never tried to. I had assumed. It was a grieving father's sanctuary, a place for his pain, and I respected that. But now something inside me ached to see it. The next morning I took a crowbar to the door. It splintered easily. Dust poured out like breath from lungs that hadn't inhaled in years. Inside was not a study. It was a shrine photos of Eva. Taken long after her death, blurry Polaroids, shadowy. Taken at night, one of them was of our front porch, dated 2 weeks after the funeral. Another showed her reflection in the pond behind our house. She was smiling in all of them except her eyes. They were completely black. In the center of the room was a journal. Grant's handwriting. Page after page of obsession, symbols, names I'd never seen before. The hollowed, the pale kin, the cold choir. He wrote about rituals. Times of year, a mirror alignment, and the phrase, "They come when grief is louder than memory." In the final pages, he admitted to making a deal. He said he'd sent the first one back, but they sent another. The last entry read, "If she comes home again, don't believe her smile." I dropped the book. The air around me shifted. Behind me, Eva stood in the doorway, head tilted. "Did Daddy tell you my secret?" she asked, and in her hand was a mirror shard. I backed away. "What secret?" She smiled. "That sometimes the right choice still leaves the door open." And behind her, in the hallway mirror, I saw two of her. One holding my hand, the other watching. That night, after Eva went to sleep, or at least pretended to, I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at the mirror, willing it to show me something. Anything her, the other version I'd seen reflected standing behind her earlier that day. Because somewhere deep inside, I knew I hadn't chosen right. Or maybe I had, but the choice itself had never mattered because grief doesn't unlock doors. It builds them, and the more I mourned, the wider they opened, and this house, this mirror, my own memory, it had become the hallway between whatever they were and whatever I used to be. And finally, when the air grew cold enough to fog the mirror, when the light flickered like breath held too long, she appeared not as a shadow or a figure behind me, but as my daughter's reflection, smiling gently, her eyes pitch black and yet kind, almost mournful, and she raised her hand and touched the glass. And I raised mine too, and our fingers almost touched, but then her smile dropped. Her lips moved slowly, and I read them in silence. "You took the wrong one." I stumbled back, heart racing, and the mirror cracked slightly, not from impact but from pressure, as if something behind it had leaned in too far. And from the crack oozed something black and slow like ink that bled memory, because the moment it touched my fingertip, I saw everything Grant's last night alive, standing in the same bathroom, whispering to the mirror, "I'm sorry." But she won't stop crying unless I let her back. And his Eva watching from the hallway, her voice echoing in his mind, "Bring me home, Daddy." He had made the trade. He had opened the door. He thought he could raise what had been taken, but what he brought back wasn't a child. It was a placeholder, a shadow stitched into a body, and I was now its final anchor. And then behind me a whisper, "Mommy, are you okay?" I turned. Ava stood in the hallway, hugging her stuffed fox, eyes wide and wet. She looked so real, so scared, but in the mirror her reflection stood still, unblinking, smiling. "Come here." "Sweetheart," I said, voice trembling, "which one of you is really Eva?" And she replied softly, "We both are. You loved us both. That's why the door stayed open." The mirror pulsed again, thump, like a heartbeat, and a third figure began to form behind her reflection. Taller, faceless, with limbs too long, like it wore a girl's skin like a dress that didn't fit. I screamed, grabbed Ava's hand, ran out of the bathroom and slammed the door, but the mirror cracked a final time. And from the other side, a voice sang the lullaby I'd once whispered to my daughter at bedtime. Only this time, it ended with my name, not Mommy. Clara. The morning after the mirror cracked for the last time, I knew something had shifted permanently, not just in the house, but inside me, as if I had become part of the space that breathed between this world and the one Eva had returned from, as if I'd been stitched into the seam between grief and memory. And when I looked at her that morning, sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal and humming the lullabies softly under her breath, I saw not just my daughter, but all the versions of her that had ever been, and all the ones I had unknowingly called home with my prayers and tears and sleepless nights staring at her picture. She looked up at me and said, "You don't have much time left, Mommy. They don't like it when doors stay open too long." And when I asked her what they wanted, she said, "A witness, a mother, someone who can hold the weight of remembering." That day, the house grew colder even as sunlight streamed through the windows, and the shadows no longer moved with us, they moved independently, flickering behind walls, standing in doorways, watching. I returned to Grant's study, searching through every note, every page, until I found what I think he meant as a ritual, a final act of severance. Scrawled in blood across the back cover of his journal, "Bury the mirror, not the child." I understood then. The mirror wasn't just glass, it was an artifact, a lens that held the echo of the trade, the tether that still tied this version of Ava to them. That night, I took the mirror to the woods, deep into the earth, back behind the old pond where Grant once found her reflection, still smiling hours after she'd left the water. I dug until my hands bled. Eva stood beside me the whole time, silent, watching. When the hole was deep enough, I lowered the mirror in and whispered, "If you're listening, take me. Leave her." The soil shuddered. The trees bent inward. And from the dark came a voice that sounded like my own, layered with thousands of others, whispering, "The exchange is complete." I passed out. When I woke, I was lying beside Ava. She was breathing, human, real, warm. Her eyes were tired. But hers, she touched my cheek and said, "It's quiet now." We went home. The mirrors stopped fogging. The walls stopped whispering. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night. Weeks passed. Ava laughed again, drew again, lived again, and me? I'm still here. But every time I walk by a mirror, I never look directly into it. Because deep down, I know that what I buried wasn't just a mirror dot, it was a version of myself, the one that broke when she died. And sometimes, when the wind hits just right, I still hear it singing my lullaby, but from the other side, thank you for staying through this entire journey. If this story gave you chills, connected to your emotions, or just made you feel something, then please subscribe, like, and share to support Dark Life Side Diaries.